remember these names, the kind of rituals associated with their worship, and try to write about Milton's attitude as well. Hello and welcome back to NibblePop. We will be continuing in this video with our reading of Paradise Lost Book 1. Today we will be focusing on the rebel angels who were lying scattered on the lake of fire and who came up one by one as if in a roll call when Satan invited them to come over to the land of hell. We will not be able to read it all line by line because it's going to take forever. I will be focusing instead on important portions which you need for your understanding of the text. We will be beginning from line 283 and we will continue till the part where the rebel angels end up landing on the hell. In the course of our reading, we will come across several epic similes, and I have already discussed about epic similes and how you can identify them or distinguish them from regular similes in my previous videos. If you have not yet watched the other videos of this series, I will really strongly advise you to watch them, because until and unless you have a complete understanding of the background and what goes before this, it will be a bit difficult for you to understand the whole of the book that you need for your exams. So let us begin with the text again, and if you haven't subscribed, do so right now to support us. The portion which we have selected today begins with an epic simile. Let's read through the lines. He scarce had ceased when the superior fiend was moving toward the shore, his ponderous shield, ethereal temper, massy, large and round, behind him cast. So what is described here? Here Milton is describing the shield of Satan. Shield is something which a soldier carries, which defends him against any attackers. So Satan's shield is a huge shield. It is compared beautifully to the moon. Let's see how. His ponderous shield, his heavy shield, ethereal temper. So it is built with something ethereal, something which is not very earthly. Massy, large and round. Behind him cast the broad circumference, hung on his shoulder like the moon. So he is comparing Satan's shield with the moon. But not just any regular moon which you see on the sky. What kind of moon is this? A special kind of moon which is described here, whose orb through optic glass the Tuscan artist views. Who is the Tuscan artist? Here, specifically, he is describing none other than Galileo. Why? Because when he was traveling through Italy in his early life, he met Galileo and they had formed a very strong friendship, it is heard. Galileo represents not just one single individual, but an entire community of scientific thought. Galileo, he discovered the telescope, and he also discovered the position and movements of different celestial bodies, different planets, stars. So when Galileo looked at the moon through his telescope, what did the moon look like? The moon did not appear as a bright, beautiful object. Like when we see the moon with our naked eyes, it is a bright object. But when you watch it through a telescope, you will notice shades and spots on the moon, and it does not look as pristine. Therefore, the moon which the shield resembles is a darkened moon. Because what has the shield undergone? With this shield, Satan has fought that heavenly war. And in that war, his shield obviously got a lot of damage. Therefore, it looks spotty. It is not pristine or clean. And when did this Tuscan artist view this moon? At evening from the top of Fiesole or in Valdarno to descry new lands, rivers or mountains in her spotty glow. After this, Satan's spear is described. His spear, to equal which the tallest pine hewn on Norwegian hills to be the mast of some great amiral, were but a wand. Now imagine the tallest pine tree which is hewn down and is used as mast or the central pole of a warship or amiral. Compared to Satan's spear, that pine is just like a small stick or wand. So how is Milton describing these objects? He is describing not by the quality of exactness. He is not exactly giving you any size. He is giving you some proportions. The moon viewed through a telescope, and you don't know the level of magnification here. The spear compared to the pine, using this word wand, not exactly telling you how long the spear was. So this is Milton's technique. He will give you a lot of details about objects, about people, about angels, but he will not tell you exactly any specific thing. So his similes actually kind of end up making it more vague, and all you are left with is a feeling of awe, a feeling of something massive, undescribable. So Satan comes down to that land of hell, his spear and his shield with him, and then he looks at the other rebel angels who were still lying on that lake of fire. And here Milton uses a succession of beautiful similes. Let us go through them one by one. Thick as autumnal leaves that strew the brooks in Vallombrosa, where the Etrurian shades, high overarched, embowered, or scattered sedge afloat. So he is comparing these rebel angels first with autumnal leaves and then with scattered sedge. Vallombrosa is a beautiful valley, and it has trees overarched, like you see trees arching on long highways, those kinds of trees which make it look like a cozy and shady part. And there is this brook where during the autumn season the leaves fall and scatter about. Apparently this is a very beautiful image where the rebel angels, they are compared to these fallen leaves, because just like the fallen leaves fall from the tree branches and end up on that brook, the rebel angels have also fallen from heaven and ended up on the lake of fire. But it is not this simple, because when you talk about autumnal leaves, you talk about decay, you talk about loss of glory and sadness. So all these emotional aspects also come into play. Additionally, look at what these leaves are doing. They strew the brook, which means they suffocate the brook, they choke the flow of water. And water is a very vital element, and it's almost like a symbol of life. So anything which chokes the flow of life is evil, and therefore these rebel angels are marked as evil from the very beginning by Milton, because he is comparing them to the leaves which choke the flow of water, and they themselves are wasted and taken away from their roots or from their original plants where they belong. The second comparison is related to the story of Moses. You remember Moses and his followers, they were escaping from Egypt and they were being pursued by the Pharaoh's men. And after that sea divided and let Moses pass through, it rejoined, and then the Egyptian army, they got scattered and they drowned. So that moment when they were drowned, their bodies were floating about, that moment is captured as a parallel moment to this situation where the rebel angels are also floating about on that lake of fire. So in the eyes of a true believer, those Egyptians were evil. They were chasing the good people. And therefore, when something or someone is compared to those evil people, then these people are also called evil. So rebel angels are invariably compared with everything which is considered to be harmful, evil, or against life. So now that we have this idea of how Milton wants to project the image of these rebel angels, let us come to the part where Satan calls them and they wake up as if, awaken from a sleep, a transfixed state, and they end up meeting Satan on that hell. And they don't come like all at once. They come following a certain order. And we will see who comes first and who comes later. And that will give us some idea about their hierarchy too. Now let's straight away jump to the first rebel angel who comes after hearing the call of Satan. I would request you to come to line number 392. First Moloch, horrid king, besmeared with blood of human sacrifice and parents' tears, though for the noise of drums and timbrels loud, their children's cries unheard, that passed through fire to his grim idol. Him the Ammonite worshipped in Rabbah and her watery plain, in Argob and in Basan, to the stream of utmost Arnon. Moloch is considered to be the horrid king who demands human sacrifice, and not just any kind of human sacrifice, the sacrifice of children. So when Moloch is described, Milton is describing the rituals of drums and timbrels, hushing down the sound of the crying parents and the crying children who die in that fire in front of Moloch's idol. So what he is doing, he is showing to us the bestiality of these pagan religions who think that they are worshipping the true God, but actually are worshipping the devils. And what kind of names is he using? He is using names such as Rabbah, Argob, Basan, Arnon. He is using these sounds to create an element of mystery which a Christian associates with these cult religious practices. He gives us information too. What information? That Moloch was the horrid king. He demanded human sacrifice and he was worshipped by the Ammonites. So you need to remember these details, because sometimes you are asked short questions or notes on Moloch, and you need to tell the examiner that Moloch was worshipped by the Ammonites, he demanded human sacrifice, and he was worshipped in this and these places. So you need to remember these informations which he is giving. And what else is Moloch's speciality? Nor content with such audacious neighborhood. So he used to be worshipped at Argob, Basan, but he was not satisfied with that much territory. He wanted to expand, and what did he do for that? He corrupted the wise Solomon. The wisest heart of Solomon he led by fraud to build his temple right against the temple of God on that opprobrious hill, Mount of Olives. So there was this temple, the true temple of the true God, and what Moloch did was he convinced Solomon to build him a temple there. And you know how important or how significant temples can be. You all know that. But temples not just carry religious meanings. They have social and political influences as well. And sometimes the religious influence is far less than the political influence. So building a temple for Moloch becomes a step against the true God, which in Milton's eyes is something very punishable. And made his grove the pleasant valley of Hinnom, Tophet thence, and black Gehenna called. Gehenna means Jehannam, or another type of hell. So he transformed the beautiful valley into hell. That was Moloch's way of corrupting humankind. Next, Chemos. So he is naming the rebel angels in the form of a roll call, sequentially. After Moloch, he is talking about Chemos. And you will see that these are very related to each other even. Next, Chemosh, the obscene dread of Moab's sons. So while Moloch was the god of the Ammonites, Chemosh was the deity of Moabites, or the tribe of Moab. And his territory, how much did it extend? From Aroer to Nebo and the wild of southmost Abarim, in Heshbon and Horonaim, Sion's realm, beyond the flowery dale of Sibmah clad with vines, and Elial to the asphaltic pool. Peor, his other name. So, first he gives you the territory of Chemosh, and then he gives you another name of Peor. Now, it is a very common practice of naming one god with 1,000 names, which all we know. Chemosh's other name was Peor, and what did Chemosh as Peor do? He enticed Israel in Sittim on their march from Nile. Now again, go back to the story of Moses. Remember, after Moses and his followers crossed the Red Sea, Moses asked his followers to stay put, and he went up to the mountain top to find some instructions from God. And when he returned, he saw that his people were not following any orders. His people were worshipping a calf, and they were performing all kinds of obnoxious rituals. So they were at that time under the influence of Peor. So how Milton is infusing the stories of sometimes classical, sometimes pagan origin into the stories of Bible is very interesting. He is as if dividing this whole world into Christian and non-Christian elements, and this is not always very right thing to do, because before a religious person, he is also an artist. To be an artist, you are required to be more objective. He is being very partial here. Just because something sounds Oriental, something sounds Asian, you cannot call it evil. Now what does he say after this? Yet thence his lustful orgies he enlarged even to that hill of scandal. Remember the hill where Moloch had his temple? Chemosh also ended up building his temple there. So now, while Moloch represents murder and violence, Chemosh represents lust and sexual rituals. So lust and hatred, they are placed side by side in the two temples. And he's saying this as, even to that hill of scandal by the grove of Moloch homicide, lust hard by hate. So two things which corrupt the soul of man is lust and hate according to Christianity. And here, these rebel angels are manifestations of these evil vices of man. So here we can say that Milton is presenting the rebel angels as concrete representations of abstract vices, symbols translated into agents. Now some interesting angels follow. With these came they who from the bordering flood of old Euphrates to the brook that parts Egypt from Syrian ground had general names of Baalim and Ashtaroth. Now Baalim and Ashtaroth are two kinds of same category of angels. Those male, these feminine. Now the point is, they did not have any fixed sex or gender. They were at times female and at times male. When they were male, they were called Baalim, and when they transformed into females, they were called Ashtaroth. For spirits, when they please, can either sex assume. Now this might sound very normal thing, like you cannot call this evil, again from the objective point of view, but the Christian idea of sexuality is very rigid. It does not allow any kind of transformation where a person's sex is concerned, because that is considered to be going against God, going against nature. And Milton, being a staunch Puritan, cannot look at this gender transformation as something usual or natural or ethical. So these are elements in Paradise Lost which can be vigorously questioned from the point of view of our contemporary idea of sexuality. But when he was writing this, homosexuality, sexual transformations, these things were taboos and considered to be evil in themselves. Now, why were these angels, Baalim and Ashtaroth, evil? Not only because they could interchange their identities, sexual identities, but also because they corrupted the Israelites and they were taken away from the true worship of the real God. For those, the race of Israel oft forsook their living strength and unfrequented left his righteous altar. The righteous altar or the righteous temple of God was left unattended because of these Baalim and Ashtaroth kind of angels who corrupted Israelites, convinced them that we are the real gods, worship us. What gives a religion strength? Numbers. That is why religions all over the world, different religions, are so concerned with the idea of conversion. Every religion wants its member to remain where they are. They hate them converting into something else. So when Baalim and Ashtaroth are ending up converting the Israelites, this becomes a sin in Milton's eyes because he is bothered. He is very strictly religious. After this, my personal favorite goddess comes, and I don't know why I love this goddess despite, and I don't understand why this is even evil. Maybe because I don't have these Christian notions in my head. He comes now to describe Astoreth. With these in troop came Astoreth. Sounds similar to Ashtaroth, but different. So don't make this confusion. Astoreth, whom the Phoenicians called Astarte, the moon goddess. And this moon goddess, she had crescent-shaped horns because the shape of the moon is also in some of its phases like a horn. So she had crescent-shaped horns, to whose bright image nightly by the moon Sidonian virgins paid their vows and songs. In Zion also not unsung, where stood her temple on the offensive mountain, built by that uxorious king, whose heart, though large, beguiled by fair idolatresses, fell to idols foul. Milton is not giving you anything evil that Astarte does. Astarte is a goddess to whom virgins, they sing and pray during moonlit nights. The uxorious king, or Solomon, that same king who built Moloch, his temple, he was seduced by his wife and he built the temple for Astarte on that same mountain. So what is wrong there? Because Astarte clearly is a kind of nature worship which is being described here. So you see, the problem with staunch Puritans is that even if that worship does not involve any violence or evil act, that form of worship which is not Christian is dismissed. Nature worship. This is all nature worship. And if you ever read about the history of world's religions, the original religions of the world, you will notice that the worship of Astarte, the worship of Pan, these were parts of not just any local cults or any evil tribes. These were the gods of ancient nature worshippers who believed in fertility, who believed in goodness of nature, who believed in community. But they were not Christians. And because they were not Christians, they are dismissed by Milton. And he is clearly using the phrase idols foul, which means that idolatry or worship of idols is prohibited in many religions. Idols are worshipped. In some religions it is not. And in Milton's eyes, idol worship is offensive. That makes Hinduism offensive to Milton too. Thammuz came next behind. Thammuz is a very sad fellow. He got attacked by a wild boar and he got wounded. That is the story. And every summer, his wound starts to bleed. That is the folklore. And with that blood, river Adonis turns red. Now, it is a very common phenomenon in different parts of the world. During summertime, some rivers turned purplish due to deposit of iron oxide due to lack of water. Now, it is the tendency of folk culture to transform these geographical phenomena into something very mysterious, religious. Here also, the purple color of that river Adonis during summertime is believed to be caused by Thammuz's wound. And because Thammuz is wounded, his followers, his worshippers, they mourn, they lament his fate with different songs and rituals. Next came one who mourned in earnest. So Thammuz's wounding or mourning for Thammuz is a play acting. But somebody who was really wounded and his fate was really tragic is somebody who came just after Thammuz. His name is Dagon, the sea monster. Next came one who mourned in earnest when the captive ark mimed his brute image, heads and hands lopped off in his own temple. Now Dagon, he was a sea monster, sea god. He was upward man and downward fish. He had a temple, and one fine morning his worshippers came and saw that his limbs were chopped off. Head and hands lopped off in his own temple on the Grunsel edge, where he fell flat and shamed his worshippers. So the point is, these rebel angels, they are worshipped by their followers up to the point where God cannot take it anymore, and he comes down, simply destroys the temple, and the people are ashamed by their deed. Now this Dagon, he also had certain territories like Azotus, Palestine, Goth, Ascalon, Acheron, and Gaza's frontier bounds. Him followed Rimmon. Rimmon is the rebel angel who came out of that lake of fire after Dagon, whose delightful seat was fair Damascus on the fertile banks of Abana and Farfar. So, Rimmon, he belonged to these parts of the globe. A leper, once he lost and gained a king. The story goes like this. There was this leper who started to believe in the real God. So he was lost by Rimmon. And a king was gained, which means that a king started to believe in Rimmon. So he gained a king. After Rimmon came Osiris, Isis, Horus and their train. Here Milton is not giving any detailed description of these angels. He is simply calling them monstrous shapes and sorceries abused fanatic Egypt and her priests. That these gods, they had corrupted the Egyptians. These gods, they had corrupted the Egyptians to seek their wandering gods disguised in brutish forms rather than human. So the fault that these gods had is that they did not have human form. So again, the same thing. Anything different from me is evil. This exclusionist philosophy, this racist philosophy, I would say, is not forgivable. Like, I can be a fan of Milton's writing, but I cannot be a fan of his philosophy when it comes to the way he is presenting the Orient, the way he is presenting Africa, the way he is presenting the non-Christian world requires a bit more compassion, understanding, at least artistic objectivity. That much we can expect of Milton. Anyway, so he is not giving you any respite. He is continuing his roll call up to the point where he talks about Belial. Belial is a very low category of rebel angel, and he is despised not because of just any rituals, but because of what he actually represents. So I will just read this part a bit. Belial came last. Then whom a spirit more lewd fell not from heaven, or more gross to love vice for itself. To him no temple stood or altar smoked. There was no temple specifically ascribed to Belial. No. Yet, who more oft than he in temples or at altars when the priest turns atheist? So a priest is supposed to be a believer of God. But when a priest gets corrupted, which is a very common thing that happens, then his heart becomes the seat of Belial. He is under the influence of Belial. As did Eli's son, who filled with lust and violence the house of God. In courts and palaces he also reigns, and in luxurious cities, where the noise of riot ascends above their loftiest stars, and injury and outrage. When people end up destroying each other's in riots, we know about riots, then the hearts of those rioters are controlled by Belial. When in courts and palaces people betray each other, then that place becomes the temple of Belial. So Belial is more than just one person controlling just one place. Belial controls the soul of man whenever he turns evil. So it is a more of a kind of a metaphoric existence, something of a spiritual corruption which Milton is connecting Belial with. And when night darkens the streets, then wander forth the sons of Belial, the people who, walk out at night completely drunk, drugged, having no sense of time, place, ethics, morality. Those people are ruled by Belial. So Belial does not need one temple. It has so many human souls to corrupt. After Belial, Milton ends his roll call. These were the prime in order and in might. The rest were long to tell, though far renowned. So he knows that the list is getting long, and he simply mentions some of the rebel angels after this. After they come and reach the plain of hell, two other rebel angels are mentioned who are connected to the building of pandemonium. So when I will be taking up that last portion of our textual reading in our next class, then I will be talking about those two other rebel angels. I'm just giving you the names here. One is Mammon and another is Mulciber. So these two rebel angels will be mentioned in that video. Till now, we have gone through most of the angels whom Milton has mentioned. For your exams, you need to remember these names, the kind of rituals associated with their worship, and whenever you are writing about these rebel angels in short notes, in long answers, try to write about Milton's attitude as well. That the attitude of dismissing any form of non-Christian worship, any form of idol worship, should be questioned, because one needs to have a certain artistic objectivity, a certain expanse of mind, acceptability, and be more tolerant about diverse forms of worship, at least from this postmodern point of view, at least from our perspective. Question Milton's outlook. It will not cost you any marks. Do not simply say that this rebel angel was worshipped by these kinds of people. Tell what impression you have from that description. What hatred you see in these descriptions. What disgust Milton is communicating about these alternative ways of worship, which will be the right way to approach this text. So, I hope this overwhelming part of the text is more accessible to you now. you can understand better Milton's attitude to the rebel angels now. My articles, the links are given in the description. They will help you get a deeper understanding of what I'm trying to tell here. I'm very open to any kinds of comments which you want to make about any specific rebel angel or any specific aspect of the portions that I've done today. I hope this class was useful to you. If yes, then I will really be happy to know that. Thank you so much for staying so long. I hope to see you very soon with the last portion of textual reading from Paradise Lost very soon. So till then, stay happy. Bye-bye.